Hello children. In the previous class we have discussed about what is friction, what are the causes of friction, how does friction take place, that we have discussed in the previous class. In today's class we are going to discuss about different types of friction. The first one, which is called as static friction. You know the meaning of static. Static means something which is standing or which is stationary, which is not able to move. That is called static. So when any object lies on the ground, for example, any heavy object, when we try to push it, there comes the friction between the object and the surface. So this is the object, and the object is lying on the ground. So these two objects, that is object and the surface of the ground, are in contact. So you are trying to push the heavy object by applying some force, but the friction that is existing between these two objects, that is the object, that heavy object, and the surface of the ground, that friction is called here static friction. The friction between two or more solid objects, and they are not moving relative to each other, but we are trying to overcome that friction here which is existing between the two objects at rest. That friction is called here static friction. So here static friction, you can see, lies between the object at rest and on the surface on which it is lying. The second one is sliding friction. Slide means the object is moving. The object is in motion. It is a resistance created by any two objects when sliding against each other. It is the resistance created by any two objects when sliding against each other. This friction is called as sliding friction, or it's also called as kinetic friction. Sliding friction or kinetic friction. So you can see here, sliding friction is the resistance created by any two objects when they are sliding. When the object is sliding over another surface, there the friction comes. That friction is called as sliding friction. We also call it as kinetic. Kinetic means in physics motion. The object is in motion. So here sliding friction exists when the object is sliding or moving over another surface. The third one is rolling friction. Rolling friction, as the name itself indicates, the friction force or frictional force or friction that occurs when one object rolls over another surface. For example, the car wheel is rolling on the ground. Here the friction which is existing between these two surfaces, that is the wheel and the ground, that is called as rolling friction. Next one is fluid friction. This friction occurs when object moves across or through a fluid. Fluid is nothing but, it is referring to the state of matter that includes both liquids and gases. You know, there are three states of matter. We say solid, liquid and gases. Liquid and gases collectively we call them as fluids. So when any object passes through fluid, it moves through fluid, it also has to face the friction there. That friction is called fluid friction. If you're swimming in the water, or the fishes moving in the water, they have to resist the friction in the opposite direction when they move. That friction is called fluid friction. Similarly, birds when they fly, the aeroplane, helicopter when they fly in the air, they have to overcome the friction that is taking place because of the air. That type of friction here it is called as fluid friction or drag. D-R-A-G, drag. So fluid friction takes place in fluids, that is when the object is passing or moving through the liquids and gases. So which are the factors that affecting that drag, fluid friction? It depends on, first one is speed of the object with respect to the fluid. More is the speed of the object, more will be the friction. If the object is moving with higher speed, the friction that may occur there will be more. If the object is moving in water or in air. What type of fluid the object is passing through? If the fluid is having more density, the friction will be more. You can say liquids. If you take the example of liquids like water, water is less denser than oil. So object can easily pass through water, but it cannot move through oil so easily because the density of oil is more. So there will be more friction. So friction is more in denser medium, denser liquids. So it is easy for the object to move in lesser denser medium because there will be less friction. And shape of the object also matters when it has to move through the liquids and air. If the surface area of the object is more, there will be more resistance or more friction and the object will not move so easily. That's why the objects that move in water or fly in the air, they are pointed in the front and pointed at the back because the area will be reduced. When the area is reduced, naturally friction becomes low and the object easily it can move in that medium. Either it is water or it is in air. That type of shape we generally call as streamlined shape. You know, fishes are streamlined body. Even when you dive into the water, you will take the shape of streamlined. You will be putting your hand in the front in the pointed way. Similarly, birds, they move in streamlined shape when they move in the air. So shape of the object also matters in with respect to the fluid friction. So you can see here order of strength of different types of friction. If we compare static friction, sliding friction and rolling friction, which friction will be maximum? Which friction will be maximum? You see here the object is at rest. The object is at rest. The interlocking between the object and the surface is more stronger. So here the friction will be maximum. That is static friction will be maximum because the object is at rest. It has not come in motion. It is just lying at rest. So when it is lying at rest, the interlocking between the two surfaces irregularities is more stronger. So thereby that friction existing between these two surfaces, we call it as static friction. Here the static friction will be maximum. When the object is in motion, the friction will take place, but interlocking between the two surfaces becomes little bit looser. The locking between the two surfaces will be little bit loose. So the friction which exists between these two surfaces is lesser compared to this surface. So this sliding friction will be lesser than static friction. Now you see here rolling friction. Object is rolling. Interlocking between the two surfaces will be very loose because the contact between the two surfaces, the surface area is reduced. Wheel, how does it move? The surface area between the wheel and the ground is less. Because area is less, naturally the interlocking becomes less. So interlocking becomes less means frictional force existing between that surfaces will be lesser. Rolling friction will be the least among the three. That's why when we want to move any object, if we take that object on a wheel structure, it is easy. If you want to drag a bag, it is difficult. You place that bag on a wheel, or you see nowadays we have trolley bags. Is it easy for us to pull that trolley bag or the bag without wheels? Of course, you all will say it is easy for us to pull the bag with wheels because wheels will reduce the friction because contact between the surface of that bag and the ground is reduced. So naturally the frictional force existing between the two forces will be reduced. So it becomes easy for us to pull the bag with lesser force, with the less amount of force. Whereas if you want to drag the bag on the ground, the of the bag, surface area of the bag that comes in contact with the ground is more. So more is the surface area, more will be the friction. So more will be the friction. We need to overcome that friction, means we have to apply more amount or more magnitude of force from our hand, muscular force. So there comes the static friction will be the least, sliding friction becomes lesser than the static friction, and rolling friction is the least. I think you must have understood how it functions. Is it, children, clear? We will discuss about frictions, how to increase, how to reduce the friction in the next class. Okay, children, thank you. Have a nice day.